Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, stay with us as the Suns get set to shine.
Perry to Gar. Here's the jump shot.
Comes to Marley, a long three. He got it! He got it! Into Booker. Here's the three. Suzanne! Another Sir Charles, and he flies in for a wham, bam, slam. Whammo time! He got it! Suzanne! Oh, brother!
Welcome to 7 Seconds or Less, a podcast about the NBA and the Phoenix Suns. My name is Max McCauley, and I am joined, as always, by my co-host. His name is David Nash. David, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, Max. Suns basketball is back, so I'm excited to jump back on. We took another little mini break, and we've come back with a special guest for this one.
Yeah, it's back in some form. It's back in stream and opposing arena's Jumbotron form. But yes, we have a guest today. He is one of the hosts of The Timeline. He is also a newly minted writer at Bright Side of the Sun. His name is Sam Cooper. Sam, how you doing?
Good, Max. It's been a long time. I've dreamed about coming on your guys' podcast, and I'm just really happy to be here. So thank you. Thank you for the introduction.
You dreamed about it. How do those dreams go? How do those dreams go exactly?
They were magnificent. I have dreamed of doing a 7 seconds or less segment. I have dreamed of being here live in the process of a Did You Know recording. So this should be really fun.
Yeah, Did You Know is less fun when we don't know the answers, so you better hope you know the answers.
That's true.
So today we are going to talk about our impressions from the first two Phoenix Suns preseason games, dive into some of the players, what we think about them. Then we're going to go into individual award predictions, both some fake Suns awards we came up with, and also the real league-wide individual awards. But before we do that, David, how about a little recap?
Yeah, general NBA news has probably overshadowed preseason with the China situation, Max, but we are not going to go into that on this podcast. So,
you don't have a take on Hong Kong and China separation?
Not one that I want to put on this podcast, Max. So I'll stick to Phoenix. Since the last episode, we've obviously had Media Day, training camp, and open practice. And then 2 preseason games, which I'm sure will come up as we dive into the episode here, but hopefully not overreacting too much. But basketball is back, as I said, 111-106 victory over Minnesota to start, where DeAndre Ayton had 18, 13, 2 and 2 in just 21 minutes. Booker had 15, Frank had 14, and your boy Ty Jerome had 11, Max. And then the loss to Sacramento, 88-105. Booker had 18, 7, 3 and 3 in 23 minutes. Carter had 16 points, Ayton had 10, and Šarić had 9. But Max, there's lots to talk about from those games and maybe some interviews from Media Day and things like that with Sam here. So I think we should just jump straight into the meat of this podcast.
Let's do it. Yeah, so I think the way we're going to handle going through preseason and Media Day, if you two want to. I didn't pay too much attention to it, but if you guys want to throw that in, that's cool. We're going to go through the positions, guards, wings, bigs, go through all the important players, our impressions, if anything's changed, yada, yada.
Yep.
Let's start with the best player on the team. His name is Devin Booker. Sam, what have you seen from Devin Booker? Is there anything that you think is interesting, anything different from last season, anything that makes you think he's better or worse, anything that we can learn from these first 2 preseason
You're just going to hear a lot of hesitation from me, I think, over the next however long we record this podcast in making any major judgments on a player based on 2 preseason games. I think Devin has basically looked the same throughout these first 2 games for Phoenix. And I think really the most interesting question that you can come up with after watching these 2 games is not so much Devin in a vacuum, but more so his relationship with Ricky Rubio and your ability to stagger those 2 guys in lineups. Like, I've heard you guys talk about it before. I've talked about it before, and I think it's just going to be something that Suns Twitter, Suns communities online are going to keep talking about because we need to. If you saw the game against the Kings on that awful Jumbotron feed last night, and you saw the lack of Tyler Johnson on the court creates these odd lineup combinations of guys like Javon Carter, Ty Jerome out on the court at the same time, it becomes very clear that the way this roster is constructed, the Suns could potentially use situations where Booker and Rubio are staggered. So, Booker for himself, I think, has basically been Devin Booker. He didn't shoot too well last night, maybe committed a few too many turnovers in the first game, but I'm not worried about him. He's going to get back on track. We should just talk about, as much as Ricky Rubio can make it easier for Booker to play, should we still kind of transition Booker into that point guard role in some hefty minutes this season?
David, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's the big question here. It's the one that I had written down to direct towards Sam. I've definitely heard him talk about this already, and he gave us a bit of a teaser there to it as well, so I don't need to ask him the question again. But, I think that's the big question. I said on Twitter earlier this week, I think maybe after the Sacramento game, I can't remember, but, it seems to be the narrative that a lot of people that I pay attention to on Suns Twitter are probably going to be talking about, but maybe the team isn't doing. And, it's a lot easier for us to talk about these on-paper decisions than have to deal with the locker room. But, it seems pretty obvious to me when they were playing together, even though it is early days, Rubio was deferring to Booker quite a lot, probably more than what you'd expect. And then the question remains is, can you split them up a little bit more to get that cohesiveness? It didn't appear to be too much a problem in Game 1 versus Minnesota, but we all saw it in Game 2. The first unit wasn't really in line with each other, and then the second unit really struggled to play make and get any kind of creation going. But probably my only other point on Booker, Max, and you and I have discussed this privately a little bit, is he looks healthier, I will say. I won't comment on his body fat percentages or anything like that. I will just say healthier.
Yeah, I'll comment on that. Not the exact percentages, but I do think he is in better shape this year, much better shape. And maybe that's related to the injury last time around. I don't know. You can probably still do cardio with a hurt hand. I'm not sure, but he looks better. I thought, shooting from three, I think his three looks good. I mean, it's an incredibly small sample size. I think he looks good shooting it. I thought he tried a little harder on defense against Sacramento. As David, you pointed out on Twitter with the clip, he didn't always go well. I think he actually, showed some effort.
Yeah.
The Booker Rubio thing is really interesting to me. I mean, I think it's going to really come down to, and this isn't a preseason take, this is an always take. Can they get good guard play aside from those guys? Because if they only have two good guards, then they have to play together a significant amount to have any good lineups. Mm-hmm. But and we can start going into Ty Jerome. I have to get every conversation to Ty Jerome now. If he can play pretty well, especially as like a secondary playmaker, shooter, scorer type, I really like him with Devin Booker. I think that may be like who you want to have with Devin Booker. Like exactly, let Booker run his point guard thing and let Ty Jerome kind of have the pressure off him, maybe a secondary playmaker and scorer and shooter. And that kind of makes a lot of sense to me because I got to say, as much as I like Rubio, especially the beginning of the Minnesota game, I thought he was really awesome. I thought that's kind of what we wanted to see out of Rubio. A little less in the next game and later in the Minnesota game. But there was still the thing where he couldn't shoot, and teams let him shoot, and there were some clanks. And I know he's been a better shooter, and I think he was pretty good in the World Cup or whatever. But, he's not a natural shooter. Teams are going to let him shoot, and there are going to be clanks. And so you would really like to have Booker play with Jerome. The skill sets fit together better.
Yeah.
And Jerome's play gave us some hope that maybe they'll be more ready to be together than we thought. But, still remains to be seen. Tyler Johnson, hard to know where he's at because we didn't see very much of him. But let's go ahead and go to Sam on Jerome. What do you think about what you saw from Ty Jerome so far?
Ty's looked really aggressive, and I think that's a good thing out of your rookie. I think it's an indication that he's exactly what James Jones was drafting, which is a more NBA-ready prospect. Now, I think some of the weaknesses that were scouted about him we still see those as well. He's not particularly deceptive. I don't see him throwing many moves out on the court that I think are going to be all that effective in doing things like creating space. And, I think that's what we saw yesterday in the game against the Kings when lineups featuring him and Carter actually shot pretty well relative to the rest of the team, but they weren't really creating for each other. They really struggled with that aspect of the game.
Yeah.
But to your point, Max, that's why potentially this is a great pairing of Ty Jerome with Devin Booker, because Devin Booker obviously is very good at that. Ty Jerome was a very good shooter from NBA range even at Virginia in a way that Ricky Rubio is just not. So I think putting those two guys together could be really interesting. And overall, I think Ty has been good in preseason.
David, what do you think?
I got to get one Tiger Rome reference in here, Max, early on. I slipped up early on.
Is that how you're pronouncing it? I didn't know if it was Tiger Rome or Tiger Romy.
I'm going with Tiger Rome, but if people want to go with Tiger Rome, I'm not going to stop that either. But that was a nice development during the week. But yeah, I like your point, Max, on Rubio clanking a few threes. I think he's 1 of 6 so far from downtown. Did shoot well in the World Cup, but it's a much shorter distance that he seems to be a lot more comfortable with taking. So I think we are that's going to be one of the things that frustrates Suns fans if the staggering doesn't happen. We're going to start to get frustrated by Rubio missing some important threes in certain situations because, defenses are already going towards Devin Booker and being willing to sag off Rubio as the negative shooter on the court. And we'll get into, I guess, who else should play to mitigate that a little bit when they are going to play Rubio and Booker together, which, mind you, they do need to do. I'm still in support of it kind of early and late in games because I think Rubio's leadership and being able to defer to him is important. But, for me, it's more about just having one of the two of them on the court at all times. And I like both of your points about Ty with Devin Booker because I think Ty's probably looked more effective on ball than off it. So, if you can get him on ball and still keep Booker, in catch and shoot situations and things, which I think is why his three has looked better as well, Max, in a small sample sizes. I think there was one pass from Ricky where I was just like, I don't know if I even saw that once last year where he just, caught the ball and it was just all net from three. So, for Ty, the touch is amazing. I commented on, just being unwilling to say right away that he's going to be able to get into the lane and kind of be crafty. I think, Sam, you nailed it on the head. He doesn't have too much in the arsenal to get in there, but it is encouraging, even though it's preseason. He does seem to be getting into the teeth of the defense a little bit, being able to finish over the top and create for others. So I'm looking forward to see that in, proper settings. And pour some out for poor Tyler Johnson, who had a horrible first game and then a migraine for the second, because I'm seeing people already, taking him out of rotation discussions, which I just think is crazy.
Oh, that's idiotic.
I still think he can be, a perfect third or fourth guard that matches up quite well with Rubio and Booker. In fact, I kind of love him, and we're going to get into Kelly and Mikhail and maybe Cam in that starting small forward role shortly. But, Tyler, Oubre and Baines all in the second unit kind of just makes me feel comfortable that there won't be too many let-ups or anything when the second unit comes in. So I kind of like that unit.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much all I have to say for the guards here, Max, other than Carter getting his fair chance at a run and Ali basically getting none except for dead minutes at the end of the games, which I guess continues on from what we were all saying in terms of Ali's spot on the roster, Max.
Yeah, I want to go a little more on Jerome and Rubio, particularly you touched on it, and touch, that's the right word. Try Jerome's touch. Oh my God.
Yep.
That dude just throws the ball towards the rim and then it just goes in. It's ridiculous. It's feathery is the word I'll use for it.
I like that.
And then I want to go to Rubio too. I mean, we can't understate how much he changed the way the Suns looked in that first preseason game compared to the last 3 seasons.
Yeah.
It was so much more competent. It really matters to have an NBA point guard, apparently. I guess that's the thing that you need. And then, before we go to Sam, I'll let you comment on any of this. David, do you want to talk about Javon Carter? Are you now rooting for him to make the team after what happened today?
We've all seen his mum on Twitter. I think she's taken over from Rashawn Holmes' mum in the hearts of Suns fans. And she clearly found his video that I put up in 7 plays, which came back this week. And then he found it as well and retweeted it too. So Javon's out there looking, and so is his mum, which I know has a small place in Sam's heart with the Timeline podcast and their reputation of parents online.
Well, funny you mentioned that, actually, because I think Mike had a conversation with Ty Jerome's father after that first game via text, where he was like, hey, he played a great game. He was super aggressive. Great game, Mark. And he texted back and he said, yeah, he was aggressive, but, just a couple mistakes here and there, just being the ultimate coach, focusing more on the negatives of his son than the positives. But
I love it.
Yeah, no, I actually didn't see that about Javon Carter's mom. I didn't know that she was so active on Twitter already. I had heard some rumors about it, but I hadn't seen.
You heard some rumors about it.
Well, no, not rumors, but I saw a couple tweets about it a couple of days ago. I was like, oh, watch out, guys. Javon Carter's mom is on Twitter, but I hadn't actually seen her like pop up in any threads. Has she been doing that?
She's out there. She is out there. And,
she is out there. She's lurking.
And, you know, he's getting a go. And, you know, I'm not the biggest fan of his right now, but his defense certainly stands out, I guess, just like DeAnthony Melton's did last year, because there's a pretty big lack of it across multiple lines in the Suns roster at the moment, guys.
Yeah. In fact, when I was talking about the Booker-Jerome lineup together, that might be a problem on defense, a slight problem.
Yes.
And one more thing on Jerome, because I'm obsessed with him. This isn't necessarily even a good thing. That guy rockets passes across the court faster than I maybe have seen anybody do. Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous how fast his passes go. They're not always accurate, but I kind of feel like if that gets to the point where they are accurate, that's going to be kind of a skill. And I'm going to guess throw passes that quickly.
Yeah, at the moment, I just remember the one that rocketed over the bench and into the crowd from the first game. I think he had 5 turnovers in that first one. But good on him, you know, and we're going to get onto Cam in a minute. They've come in confident, and that's what you want when you draft, you know, a couple of more experienced rookies, I guess. And, you know, they're coming in, they know their games. They certainly seem to know their roles within the Suns' offense as well. And neither of them have looked, you know, I think Fox rocked Ty Jerome on one possession in the last game against Sacramento, but neither of them have looked like total liabilities on defense, which, you know, James Jones and Monty had both commented on after drafting them is, you know, maybe not the greatest individual defenders, but they know how to work within a system and kind of play their role. So, yeah, I think encouraging signs. We all, you know, and everyone probably listening to this at the moment, particularly if they listen to it before the next Portland game, you know, are going to have that Kings game stuck in our heads. But I guess as Sam touched on at the very top, let's not overreact too much to everything that happened in that Kings game.
Yeah, De'Aaron Fox rocks everybody.
Exactly.
All right, Sam, let's move on to the wings here. Let's go to Cam Johnson. He started both of these games, which is interesting. I think it's because of the injuries, but still interesting. What are your impressions of the rookie? Other than the fact that he's old, we now have other things to talk about him with. So what did you see from him in the first couple games?
I'm actually surprised you want to start with Cam and not Kelly, because I think
the Suns started with him, so
we can bring out the spice. That's true, they did start with him. Okay, I'll save my spiciest takes for Kelly Oubre, but Cam has looked Cam has looked pretty solid so far. You know, I still don't see a compelling case for him to crack a regular season rotation if everyone else is healthy, which right now that's just not the case. But, you know, I guess the one thing is, actually, I know he's not a wing, but depending on your feelings of Frank Kaminsky as a backup 4 versus what's probably his more natural position as a 5 right now, you could argue, hey, maybe Cam can really make some minutes for himself in the rotation there and earn some minutes at the 4. But at the 3, he's been solid for a rookie. Again, just like Ty, he's been NBA ready. He's been very confident in his shot. And you heard one of the things that came out of media day and came out of training camp was Monty talking about, I think he just said it a few days ago, about how he wants his players to be making decisions within half a second or less, and Cam catches it on the perimeter and he immediately rises up for a shot. There's no hesitation. He's very confident in that aspect of his game, obviously. But not enough for him to be playing over Kelly, who, you know, obviously, despite some struggles, it's not like I've given up on him, or McHale, to start the regular season. So I don't know. I don't really think Cam's position has changed much through 2 games, and that's unfortunate for him, but it's kind of just the way it is.
David, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You know, it's been good to see, you know, we discussed this, I think, last episode, Max, is not seeing both him and Jerome in Summer League. This was going to be our chance. I think he's probably actually been helped by coming in and starting with those starters, because he can play more of a role that suits him. Whereas if he had to, you know, come off the bench in these preseason games and play with the second unit, you know, he might be asked to do a little bit more and kind of be exposed a little bit. So that role has certainly suited him, particularly while they trial some guys that you would have to think aren't going to be in the regular rotation. Cam might be one of those. Cam might not be one of those. You know, he is confident with the ball. He's thrown up 6 threes so far in the 2 games. I just hope he keeps getting them up. You know, I looked over the first 2 box scores, and there was probably 4 or 5 guys that shot more threes than him in the first 2 games, and that just shouldn't happen if he's playing, you know, 15, 20 minutes a night. That's what he's in there for. So, you know, I just encourage him to keep getting them up. And he's shown some other flashes too, you know, whether it's been defensively or, as Sam said, moving the ball, making quick decisions. So that's probably been the most encouraging thing with Cam so far, particularly with him having to start. And, makes it all a little bit funny that we continually in the offseason go over these things around, like, why would you draft another wing and blah, blah, blah. And then the season starts and both Kelly and Mikhail are injured. And that's why, Max, because, we can talk about these things on paper all the time, but things happen during an NBA season, and having multiple wings is never a bad thing, and having them compete for a couple of spots. So, I'll throw it to you, Max, and it's probably like the staggering thing question here, but you can throw in some of your thoughts around this question, and then we can get Sam's thoughts on it. Who should start and who will start?
At the small forward position, David?
Yes, but if you want to allude to something else, because I've got a bit of a theory as well, feel free to mix it up as well.
Ooh, I didn't realize you had a theory. Well, I'll start with Cam's real quick, and I'll get to your question. I'm pretty impressed. Actually, I'm very impressed. I think he's really confident. I'm just impressed with how confident he is.
Yep.
I don't think the lack of his getting shots off is really his fault. I think the Suns haven't done a great job of creating shots for him.
Yep.
So we'll see. I'm pretty encouraged by what I saw from Cam. In terms of who I think should start, Mikal Bridges is obviously better than Kelly Oubre, David. Listen, it was one game, but I already thought this, and it's kind of confirmation bias. Mikal Bridges is just really damn good at defense, and they need defense
desperately.
David, again, referencing the post you put on earlier of Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton pretending to play defense. Yeah, they need Mikal's defense in there. So I think and the other point, which both of us have made a million times, I think everyone's made this point. Kelly Oubre makes more sense on the bench with his energy and his aggression. So I don't even think it's that difficult.
Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, well, look, Kelly did his best Josh Jackson impression last night, and I think it's just...
I didn't realize he was 0 of 9. Jesus Christ, Kelly.
God damn, he was so bad.
0 of 9, a couple of bricks right at the rim, and the unfortunate thing is that we haven't seen much of Kelly yet. There hasn't been it's only a half-season sample size, but you see games like this and you really start to realize that at his worst, this is a one-dimensional player. And his weaknesses are... they just stand out so clearly in the starting lineup in a way that just wouldn't be the case if Mikhail were starting.
Yeah.
The fact that he is the one guy right now in a starting lineup of Rubio, Booker, him, Šarić, and Ayton who can't create for others, and he's also just the one. Actually, I guess he and Rubio both can't shoot, so you have that problem in the starting lineup. But the playmaking thing really stands out when Kelly is in there versus Mikhail, who I thought showed amazing flashes of playmaking last season.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess it leads to a greater point of there's this scary proposition about this season with the Suns in general, where if the Suns are going to win as many games as some Suns homers believe they will, if you want to get to 35 plus wins, it's not going to be based on the argument, I don't think, of Devin Booker being one of the greatest players in the NBA. He's great, but he's just not there yet. Mm-hmm. It's going to be based on the Suns having this balanced attack and really getting good seasons out of Kelly Oubre, Dario Šarić, and aging Ricky Rubio, and just frankly, all of these guys who are unknowns at this point, and that goes for Kelly Oubre as well. He is very much an unknown to us at this point. And just the proposition of really getting the best case scenario rather than more of like a mid case scenario out of all of those guys is a little bit concerning to me, especially after seeing Kelly throw up a complete dud last night. Again, I'm not making any major judgments on him based on preseason, but I just think Mikhail's skill set does fit in the starting lineup a lot better. I hope Mikhail plays more. That doesn't mean I dislike Kelly Oubre, but I think there's a lot more to work with if you throw Mikhail in the starting lineup point blank.
So real quick on the Kelly thing, I see what you're saying. He threw up a complete 0 because he was very bad. In fact, I think the Josh Jackson comparison was even more apparent when he got a jump shot blocked from behind by De'Aaron Fox. That's something that Josh actually would do. But he did, and a couple people made this point on Twitter, he did get a stagnant offense kind of going by just getting to the line.
Yeah.
And that's something he does. So and again, that's something that makes sense in the bench unit. So I think that's kind of what you want out of Kelly. He's somebody who can generate points in a sort of like a in the trenches sort of way, which I think is more useful when you're not playing with Booker and Ayton, who are our scorers. But David, go ahead and go on. You were about to jump in there.
No, I think you make the perfect point with Kelly, particularly with the game last night. 8 of 10 from free throws was basically the only way that he got his points after being 0 of 9 from the field. And you're right, that fits much more inside the second unit. Maybe there's times with that first unit where things are stagnant, where it would be great to have an aggressive guy like Kelly, but all things going well, like that Minnesota game, if Ayton, Rubio, and Booker are all rolling, you don't really need that in the starting lineup. It's a much bigger need in the second unit. And, Mikhail, even in his 15 minutes last night, looked really aggressive. Sam, I'm with you in terms of the flashes that he showed towards the end of last season, playmaking and kind of off the dribble. Unfortunately, the shot looks kind of the same as last year, which is not great.
It 100% does.
Mm-hmm. Except for that off the dribble shot that he had, David, not a 3-pointer, but that was beautiful.
It seems to be something to do with depth. It's something around the 3-point line that he has changed his mechanics. Whereas, that one where he took a dribble inside, it was perfect. It's exactly what you want to see, and you wish that you saw it a little bit more with his 3-point shot. So I don't need to double down too much on both of those points. I think Mikhail has to start. That's a bit of a change of tune for me. I thought it was probably the right move, but didn't think it was going to happen. Whereas I kind of hope now with these last two games, Kelly got a chance with the first unit towards the end of the game yesterday. I'm hoping Mikhail gets his chance in these last two games, and I think it will be very obvious to everyone involved that that's the move that they need to make. Now, if they kind of want to play the hedge game here a little bit, I think backup power forward is one of the weaker positions if you look at the whole rotation at the moment. We're going to get into the bigs in a little bit, but I wouldn't be against Šarić coming off the bench and starting Mikhail and Kelly together.
Sam, what do you think?
Can I say that I don't think that's a bad idea from a basketball standpoint, David, but Šarić is the wild card on this roster who scares me from a chemistry standpoint. And I've gone on the record saying that before. It's like, I go into I think Kelly's comments that he's made about Mikhail, Kelly really roots hard for Mikal Bridges, which is not something you typically see. Like, more so than most people root for their backup who is actively competing with them for minutes do.
Yeah.
And I think that's really something he should be commended for, is he is embracing that kind of veteran role, even though they're basically the same age.
Yeah.
Whereas Šarić is coming from a situation where he played for a team that was substantially better than the Suns were last season in Minnesota. And he got a decent amount of minutes. He played 24 minutes per game. He started half of the games he was there, and he was deeply, deeply unhappy with that situation. So if we decide that Kelly Oubre is a better player than Dario Šarić, then Oubre should start and Šarić should sit on the bench. However, I am worried about putting Šarić on the bench, even though, he's only on a 1-year deal and you could just kick him off the roster next year, just because I worry about a repeat situation there. Does that make sense to you guys? Or
no, it absolutely makes sense. It's really interesting. I guess this is kind of a transition into Dario and the bigs. I'll just real quick answer David's thing. I think Kelly and Mikal should be the closing unit for sure.
Yes.
Those are definitely going to be our best unit. And it's kind of preview when I think about Šarić so far. But in terms of starting it's matchup based. I think the Suns, we've talked about this before, David, they're going to want to keep a consistent starting unit out there night to night. I don't think they're going to switch around. Maybe it makes sense for them to sort of in a theoretical level, but I just don't think they're going to want to do that. If they do, then it would make sense for them to start Kelly at power forward in matchups where they're not playing against Julius Randle as power forward. But I just don't see them going that way. So I think they're going to have to start Šarić there.
Yeah.
So let's just use that as a transition to go into Šarić. I don't know. We'll start with David. David, I don't know. I don't like him very much. I see some of the heads up, like he's smart plays from him. I think he plays very well when the Suns are playing well. I think he's kind of like, he kind of strikes me as a front runner, David. And I know I'm doing this off a couple of games. I watched with Philly, though, in Minnesota, and kind of felt the same way about him.
Yeah.
I think he plays very well when everyone around him is playing well. I think when everyone around him is not playing well, he's not the guy to raise all boats. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think, I'll touch on a few things here. The whole, starting Kelly and Mikal thing would just be about getting as much athleticism as possible into that, best unit. And I think you make a good point. We've talked about this quite a lot. If your best unit is finishing games and not necessarily starting them, then that's not the end of the world as well. So that might be another way to, approach it without pissing Šarić off. As, Sam kind of alluded to there, it could go pretty badly if you jettison him to the bench right away. I think he looks a little bit thinner, which we were kind of hoping for, Max. I'm going to start off with a really negative comparison here that people are going to hate me for, and then try and bring a little bit of positivity back to it. But the first 2 games I've seen of him remind me of what I saw from Ryan Anderson to start last year. And that's just like a total reluctance to shoot, trying to do too much, on closeouts rather than just shooting if he's open and moving the ball on if he's not. He looks rusty. I think Sam, again, made the perfect point up the top. Let's not overreact here. Something that I've never really understood about him. Well, I understand it, but hard to get my head around with NBA basketball compared to sports that I watch, back here home. So you just don't get a lot of time together before the season starts, versus some sports that I watch back here where they're kind of training for 2 or 3 months together and kind of come out in game 1 as a, united unit. So I'm going to give him a little bit of time before I start, throwing out that he's a hopeless cause on the Suns. But, I think it's been interesting to see what they're trying to do with the 4s. I think there's, particularly with Šarić and Frank, there's a lot of kind of early offense post touches to kind of spread the floor a little bit and get Ayton dangerous. And, a lot of pick and pop, brush screen type stuff as well to use their shooting. Just unfortunately, no one's really shot the ball all that well yet. But, hopefully that's one of the things that a little bit of rust comes off to start the season, and he's looking a little bit better. What do you think, Sam?
I'm really glad you mentioned the shooting thing, because it's really easy to be down on this team when they're breaking so many shots. The Suns shot 23% from 3 over these 2 games, and that's just not sustainable. So, I think we could be talking in much better terms about them if they had made just 3 or 4 more threes yesterday and had been able to rise up to an average percentage. And I think that applies to Dario specifically as well, A, because he's been missing shots, but B, because I think stretch 4 in particular is the role and the position that frustrates fans in the NBA, I think, more than any other position or any other role. Because oftentimes with these stretch 4s, it's all they do. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it's all that Dario is capable of. I actually think he's capable of so much more than that. But oftentimes, if that's the role you're playing on offense, and you come on nights like the Suns had against Sacramento last night, where you're not hitting shots and your shot just looks flat, you're not contributing anything else to your team, and the fans get really, really riled up, which is something that we've seen with Channing Frye, Mirza Teletovic, Dragan Bender and Marquise Chris, obviously, to an extent, with both of them over the past several years. So I think the same is, and Ryan Anderson, too. I kind of forget just how many stretch 4s we've had on this team over the past decade. So I think the same is going to be true for Dario. I think he's got a lot more to his game, and I think the Suns will figure out how to use him. I like the elbow touches because, again, one of the advantages of him is this is a guy where I really do believe in his ability to play make. Yep. Now, I will say, the post touches he's had so far, just through 2 games, have been disastrous.
Yeah, not good.
Some of the hook shots that he's taken have looked like, Alex Len-esque, and they've just been really bad. But I don't, expect Dario to be a post-up player. I expect him to create some playmaking every once in a while out of the post, but I think three-point shooting will be his bread and butter. I think he's a guy where he can actually get out in transition and run way more than Ryan Anderson was able to do, and we just haven't gotten to see that yet, but it's going to come eventually, and I don't know. I have faith that he can be a starting caliber power forward for sure.
Yeah, and I think we even saw, maybe even a couple of pick and rolls. I remember kind of my eyes opening when I saw him and DeAndre try and run a pick and roll together. I don't think the result was great, but yeah, I think that's a good point by you, Sam, is that they are at least thinking about how they can involve him more in the offense for what he believes he's capable of and has shown he is capable of with both Philly and Minnesota in some shorter stints as well. So yeah, let's one to watch and hopefully can get acclimatized with the starting unit a little bit more and we're not having those panic situations, Max.
Yeah, even if we're nitpicking here on Sarge, he's not maybe a long-term solution or anything, but he's so much better than we had last year at the 4.
Yes.
I think. At least he makes threes. He can actually make the threes when they come to him. And he plays along with the team's concept. When the team's playing well, he won't submarine them. That's kind of what we're looking for, starting for, based on where we've been. But I think it's time to get to maybe the elephant in the room, the biggest man in the Suns. His name is DeAndre Ayton. I think DeAndre Ayton was actually pretty good in the first game. Even beyond the numbers, obviously the numbers were good, but I don't care what the numbers of DeAndre Ayton. I want to see him play better defense, and he played better defense in the first game, I thought. I mean, he wasn't excellent, but he was better.
Yep.
Much better, and that's kind of what we want to see from him. If he's at just, kind of okay levels, and the offense goes along with it, great. That's what we want to see from DeAndre Ayton. That's progression. The Sacramento game was not that. He was much, much worse. He looked a lot more like last year. Again, I'm not going to, really go too far into preseason games to judge whether DeAndre Ayton's going to bring effort to this team this year. I think DeAndre Ayton, of anybody, is not going to care much about preseason games. So is there anything we could learn from this, Sam, about what we saw from DeAndre Ayton? Are you encouraged, discouraged, or is it really just let's wait for game 1 against Sacramento and see what we got?
Well, I think he had one great game and one terrible game, so you take the average and land somewhere in the middle. And I guess we'll see how he plays tomorrow and then adjust based on that. But the way I'm feeling with DeAndre right now is I just don't know what it's like personally to be 7'1" and 250 pounds. And when I look at him right now, it's like I can't tell if he really doesn't care or if his conditioning just has that far to go. Like in theory, this is an athletic player, but some of the reads he makes, I'm like, can he really not bridge that gap? Can he not make that distance? Yeah. Or is this just truly an effort problem? That's the thing I'm struggling with DeAndre right now when I watch him. Yeah. I just can't tell. Supposedly on paper, he's an athletic guy, but I can't tell what he's actually capable of because I don't see him play at 100% with that full motor all that often. We didn't see it much last year, and we haven't seen it through the first 2 games. He was very good with his stat line, as you pointed out, Max, in Game 1 against Minnesota, but obviously that's not reflective of the full picture.
David, real quick, I want to ask Sam this. You and I both talked about this, so and this is not just based on this one preseason game, not an overreaction or anything, because this has been since college. Is it a recognition thing, a reaction time thing? What do you think it is that is causing DeAndre Ayton to not be in the right spots on this stuff? Because obviously he's athletic enough, and I honestly don't think it seems like he's not trying. I think he is trying. Why is he not getting to these spots?
It's just, I wish I had an answer for you, but it's the great mystery, right? Because this is a guy, you need reaction time to play perimeter defense. It's not something that goes away when you're protecting the rim. So the notion that DeAndre is able to, for the most part, stay in front of his man out there, but then you bring him a few feet closer, and suddenly he's terrible, I just don't understand what it is. I'm at a loss.
It's flummoxing, David.
Max, you mentioned that video that I posted of Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. I think that's kind of it in a nutshell at the moment is, the way I look at it is he just doesn't read the game at a level of what you would hope for a guy who's anchoring your defense. And therefore, these low light plays, as we call them, tend to stand out a hell of a lot more. The point that I was trying to make on Twitter is I just want somebody to simplify the game for him.
Yep.
Just tell him to get to the rim and be a 7'1", 250-pound massive human and make guys finish over you. If they still finish over you, that's fine. I actually think that's one thing that Aaron Baines does really, really well and is way less athletic than DeAndre Ayton. And, one thing that I'm hoping he's going to be able to teach him the more that they practice throughout the year, because instead he goes for the steal that he's just never going to get to, and then it's a wide open dunk, and that just reflects really badly on him and the team's defense overall. So, I think as a defender of Igor, I think they simplified the game really well for him last year on both ends. People saw that as them not using him to his utmost ability. I actually think that it was smart coaching. It made the game really simple for him. Even the defensive flashes that we saw were from, really making it easy for him and saying, we want you to guard Giannis, we want you to guard LeBron. That's your role. Try and do it to the best of your ability. I just want someone, it's, I guess, got to be Mark Bryan in this case, to kind of just show him that if he gets stuck, just run to the rim and use verticality and make guys finish over you. And I think we'll actually see a much better defender this year. But, perfect that we've seen one pretty good game and one pretty bad game from him so far, because that's just a microcosm of DeAndre Ayton and I guess 2 camps that talk about DeAndre Ayton on the internet. So things are perfect so far. And Sam, as you said, someone will come out on top after the next game, I guess, with the advantage. But projecting forward a little bit, guys, 5 games into the season, we're saying we don't want to overreact to 2 preseason games here, but 5 games into the season, what's the one thing, Sam, that we really want to see from Ayton? You mentioned motor and stuff there. And then I guess what's the one thing that we don't want to see that would just ring alarm bells for you very early in the season if we're getting that out of DeAndre Ayton?
Yeah, we want to see motor, for lack of a better term. I'm trying to think of a better way to phrase it, but really,
no, that's a good term, Sam.
I can't think of a better package. That's exactly what I want from him. He doesn't have to have a complicated game. I don't need him taking 20 shots. I don't need him taking, frankly, I do hope we get to the point this season where he's taking threes.
Yeah.
But I don't need it immediately. A simple game, defense first, is fine from DeAndre Ayton, and there are enough offensive options on this team, thanks to James Jones, that he doesn't have to worry all that much about them. As much as people were crying for more and more touches under Igor Kokoshkov, I don't expect that to be an immediate thing under Monty. And so really it just comes down to motor. Focus on the offensive rebounds, focus on defense, boxing out, setting hard screens, thanks to the mentorship you get from Aaron Baines, and the rest will take care of itself with time.
This is going to sound weird, I think, to most people. I want to see DeAndre Ayton get dunked on. I want people to dunk on him multiple times. That means he's in the right place.
Yep.
You know what I mean? At least.
Yep.
Aaron Baines gets dunked on.
Sean Bradley
is, if you're in the right place, you get dunked on sometimes. I would also love to see Ayton dunk on others. I want him to be more involved in the plays.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's too many plays where Ayton should be involved in the play because he's the most athletically gifted giant guy in the court, and he's just not there. I want him to be involved. I want him to have an impact on the game. I think in game 1 he did that. I think he did a good job, kind of being in the way. I think he did a job with verticality. I think he did a good job on offense, getting, him and Rubio. Some of the pick and roll stuff was beautiful. Like, we shouldn't overlook how awesome Ayton and Rubio were in game 1.
Yeah.
There was some really nice stuff there. Also, Ayton demonstrated the touch. I mean, Ayton's touch is still there, guys. He is incredible.
It's ridiculous.
He had a turnaround jumper from 16 feet.
Yeah.
Towards the baseline. It's just ridiculous. DeAndre Ayton is as gifted as you're going to find a person. Mm-hmm. He just needs to give a shit. That's all we need from DeAndre Ayton. And listen, it could just be preseason. I'm not seeing it yet. It's just preseason. But I want to see him in the first few games of the season, David, look like he gives a shit.
Yeah, I think he is learning, and we're all learning along with him, that the game doesn't come to you in the NBA. You said something the other day, Max, that this really hit me between the eyes. He's got to go out and be assertive every single game. And I think this is where the coaches earn their money. This is where Ricky Rubio, as both a leader and a point guard, earns their money. They have to work out how to tap into whatever it is with DeAndre Ayton to make him realize that he has to go and grab every single game by the balls and not expect the game to come to him, because that's when we see the really bad DeAndre Ayton games. When he's involved, when he's aggressive, we all praise him because it's great, and the touch shows, the defense shows, everything's showing, and we're all happy again. But whoever it is that needs to do it and earn their paycheck, whether it's him himself as well as some others, they need to tap into whatever they can do on a nightly basis. Because Kellen and Kevin on their Empire of the Suns podcast asked this question a few weeks ago, is how many games this season are we going to see a dud, like consecutively? Like, is it going to be every 4 or 5 games, or like last season it was probably every 3 or 4, I suppose? And the answer should just be 0. Like, we shouldn't be having a dud preseason game number 2 at the very start of the season. And that's why, even though it is preseason, it is a little bit concerning with DeAndre.
Yeah, what we need to see from him is that he gives a shit, and we're not going to see that until the first few games of the regular season. Sam, anyone else you want to talk about, Ayton or any of the other bigs, or should we go to Did You Know?
I think basically time for Did You Know. I don't think I don't know. Diallo didn't make much of an impression on you guys, right? Yeah.
Terrible.
Diallo and Frank have both looked rough, and my only real thing to say on them is I was mentioning earlier in the off-season, Max, that I'm pretty sure they're both 5s, and I didn't see anything in the first 2 games to change my opinion on that right now.
A lot of 5s, not a lot of 4s.
Yep. But shout out to our guy Aaron Baines, who broke his nose and still played in a damn preseason game with a face mask.
Yeah, we'll see. I know we have a timeline guy on here. There tend to be Rashawn Holmes fans. Rashawn Holmes got the better of Aaron Baines.
He sure did.
He did. I love Rashawn Holmes still.
I like him a lot too. We'll see how the regular season goes. Maybe it'll work out. We'll see. But let's go to Did You Know?
All right, so Max and Sam, with the NBA season fast approaching, I took my annual look around the league rosters and was quite surprised by how many ex-Suns names I saw pop up. Granted, we're currently at the point of the preseason where a lot of teams are carrying 20 players, but did you know before a certain number one pick was waived the other day, there were currently 41 ex-Suns on other teams? Guys, with 29 other teams in the league, I'm going to set the line right down the middle here at 14.5 for your first quiz. Would you go the over or under for how many teams in the NBA currently have an ex-Phoenix Suns on their roster? Sam, you're the guest. We will throw you in the fire first.
The Suns have had an absurd amount of players over the past few years. Just an absurd amount of 10-day. I think probably every NBA team has some former 10-day contract Suns point guard. So I'm going to take the over, David.
Max?
Yeah, I'm over too. Sam convinced me.
You're both starting off well here. The answer is over, with 17 of the other 29 teams.
That's hilarious.
Currently holding a player who has come through the desert and worn the purple and orange. Well, in some cases, there are guys that maybe didn't even make it to the Valley or put on the jersey, but they were officially Suns for a short period either way. Now, before we get onto some of the players and their teams, I'll start with the 12 teams that, for better or worse, don't currently have an ex-Sun on their roster. And for good measure, I'm going to throw in the closest tie to Phoenix that I possibly can. First up, Boston and Brooklyn. Neither have Suns on the court right now, but they have ex-Suns in charge of getting them on the court, and that is Danny Ainge, a Sun from 92 to 95, and Sean Marks from 06 to 08 as their respective.
Wait, David, hold on. The
GMs
Milwaukee pick doesn't count
teams.
as a Sun. It was here so long, I felt like it became a Sun.
I should have had that as the link, but no, it doesn't. Next up is the Charlotte Hornets, who, of course, did us all a favor by stealing Terry Rozier from us this offseason, but they also have a Zeller brother in Cody. Another Zeller, Tyler, has a summer deal with the Denver Nuggets, who are the fourth team without an ex-Sun. But Max and Sam, another quiz for you. What's the first name of the third Zeller who spent a hot minute on the Suns?
Luke.
Hey, Sam, 2 from 2.
Look at this guy.
Our fifth team is the LA Clippers, who of course landed Kawhi Leonard this offseason. Our Suns link here is that the Suns apparently famously passed up on Kawhi at the draft because he sweated through his suit during the interview. Shout out to 2 of the 41 ex-Suns around the league in the Morris twins, with Detroit and New York right now, who were taken at 13 and 14 in that draft before Kawhi. Onto the 6th team, Minnesota, who we played the other day, who landed Jarrett Culver with the Suns pick in the draft. And the 7th team, New Orleans, who have no on-court ex-Phoenicians, but Alvin Gentry, David Griffin, and Aaron Nelson are leading their off-court team, as we know. The closest link I could get for Orlando, our 8th team, is Michael Carter-Williams is on their team and was traded from our 9th team, Philadelphia, in a deal that involved ex-Sun Brandon Knight. As for Philly, Haywood Highsmith signed an Exhibit 10 deal with them this summer after reneging on the same deal from Phoenix, apparently, and that leaves us with 3 more teams to go. 10th is the Spurs, and everyone listening probably knows how close the Suns came to signing LaMarcus Aldridge a few years ago. 11th, the 18-19 champion Toronto Raptors have literally nothing tied to the Phoenix Suns, Max, and that's probably a great metaphor for both teams' success recently, but they have currently taken a chance on 2 guys with Arizona ties. Max, Sam got the last one right, so I'm throwing to you. Any guesses on the 2 guys on their roster that have Arizona University ties right now?
I hate the University of Arizona, David, so I refuse to answer the question.
Sam?
I'm not from Arizona, so I don't know shit. What team is Jared Bayless on these days? That can't be. Was he on Toronto 10 years ago, and I'm just misremembering that?
I think you might be right with that part of it, but this answer is Stanley Johnson and Rondé Hollis Jefferson.
Oh.
Ooh.
Rondé Hollis-Jefferson?
By the way, David, real quick, the fact that people wanted Rondé Hollis-Jefferson on the Suns is a sign that we have a lot of homers on there.
Last but likely not least this season are the Utah Jazz, who of course gave us our brand new point guard in Ricky Rubio. But now, onto the teams that do have ex-Suns on their teams this season.
God.
We have 30 guaranteed contracts around the league, plus 5 non-guaranteed NBA deals, and finally 6 summer prove-it type contracts for guys trying to make the final cut. Let's start with those summer deals. If I told you all 6 were on the Suns within the last 2 seasons, plus an extra number 1 pick who was recently waived, how many of those could you guess between you? And bonus points if you can tell me the team they're on.
That's so hard. That's so hard, David.
This is the thing. David's very mean, Sam.
I can give you the number 1 pick who was cut, who was on the Suns, but outside of that, I don't know who I can give you. Who's on the Suns in the past 2 seasons?
Give us that one first, Sam.
Okay, Anthony Bennett is easy.
All right, I'll give you that one. Now we've got 5 more to go, and one of them has been all over Twitter at the moment, playing on a very good team.
Marquise Chris?
That's number 2.
Oh my god, I should have gotten that. This is such a hard exercise. Okay, Tyler Ulis? What's he doing?
Yes, he's on Sacramento. Okay. That's number 3.
Okay, we're getting somewhere.
The last 3 are pretty hard. One of them was on our roster, I think, at the end of last year, and just changed summer deals actually from Atlanta to Houston when they cut Anthony Bennett.
I've already repressed last year's roster.
Is Peter Jock or whatever that guy's name is?
No, he's not.
Where did Ray Spalding sign? He signed with Houston, didn't he? There's 4.
That's the one I was looking for.
Oh, wow.
And I'll give you the last 2. We've got Devon Reed currently sitting in Miami, and Eric Moreland is sitting in Oklahoma City.
Wow.
Now, I won't test you on the non-guarantees, but for those 5, we have Shaq Harrison in Chicago, Ryan Anderson in Houston, Dragan Bender in Milwaukee, Jordan McRae in Washington, and the oldest ex-son of them all, Joe Johnson in Detroit. I won't spend the next 10 minutes listing the other 30 guaranteed guys, but last test for this episode. Which team do you think has the most guaranteed ex-Suns playing overall on their team, guys?
Oh, wow. Max, do you have a guess?
The most guaranteed ex-Suns. Oh, man. No, I don't. I don't have a guess at all.
Miami has 2. There has to be someone with more than that.
There's someone with a lot more, hilariously.
What? Who?
Can you give us a hint, David?
They've come up a couple of times in answers so far.
They have.
Some of our favorite one of our favorite ex-Suns is definitely on this team.
Houston?
Yes, the Houston Rockets have 7 total ex-Phoenix Suns on their team.
That is a lot.
There's the previously mentioned Ryan Anderson, plus PJ Tucker, plus Daniel House.
They have Ryan Anderson back. Wow, I forgot about that.
Plus Austin Rivers, plus Gerald Green, and also Tyson Chandler.
And also, James Harden apparently was almost an ex-Sun because Ryan McDonough now says that everybody good in the league is exes.
But plus they have Mike D'Antoni leading the charge, and until very recently, as I mentioned, Anthony Bennett was on there too, but replaced by Ray Spalding. Not a test, and it's a pretty sorry bunch to choose from, guys, but who's your favourite ex-Sun currently still in the league? Sam, you first.
Come on, it's PJ Tucker.
Max?
My favorite, Sam stole the good one. It's gotta be.
Come on.
It is PJ Tucker. Everyone loves PJ Tucker.
Yeah.
How can you hate PJ Tucker? You know, David, great job with the research here. I just gotta say, whenever I listen to an episode from you guys, I'm always listening to this segment and I'm thinking, oh, wow, I could easily get those. That doesn't seem that hard at all. And then you guys actually put me on the spot, and this is really fucking hard. So great job with the questions.
It's way harder.
Some other of my favorites, Melton, of course, in Memphis, Dragic in Miami, Robin Lopez, who's now in Milwaukee, and Ish Smith is in Washington. But finishing up now, we're of course at episode 64 for anyone listening along as we go here. If we added the 41 ex-Suns around the league to the current Suns roster of 19, we get to 60 players who have worn the Suns colours in the NBA. But then, there are also 4 guys still in the league who were technically drafted with the Suns pick in the first round and therefore wore the purple and orange cap on draft night, which brings us, of course, to our magic number of 64 for this episode. So I'll leave you with this and the listeners, guys. With those 4, before we move on, there was Jarrett Culver for Minnesota this year, as I mentioned before, and a photo that might haunt me forever. Zaire Smith, Philadelphia, drafted last year and traded for Mikal Bridges. Skal Labissiere in Portland, drafted in 2016 and traded in a deal included 2 other ex-Suns, Marquise Chris and Bogdan Bogdanovic. And finally, for the 4th and final player, you have to go all the way back to 10 years earlier, where Rajon Rondo, who's currently with the Lakers, was drafted and traded by the Suns. And guess what, Max? Rondo was traded with Bryant Grant for a future first-round pick. That pick became Rudy Fernandez, who was traded again with another Suns player just for cash. And that other player in that trade, current Phoenix Suns GM, James Jones, which is a great spot for us to end. And Sam,
Max,
jump in and say what you were going to say, and then we'll move on.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to say, Max, and you know who gets credit for drafting Rajon Rondo for Boston back in 2007?
Ryan McDonough.
It's Ryan McDonough. And it was one of the reasons that Ryan McDonough was hired and everyone was so excited in 2013 in Phoenix.
Ryan McDonough gets credit for a lot of good things that he did, right? What about all the things that didn't go so well? Ryan, you don't bring those up in the interview, see you. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on from Ryan McDonough bashing to Suns Awards. We're going to start with Suns Awards. So we're going to do both Suns and league-wide awards.
Yep.
We modified some of the Suns Awards because not all the league-wide awards make sense for the Suns. And the first 2 are good examples of that. So we're going to start with Executive of the Year, which is not Ryan McDonough. And for the Suns, really, it makes no sense to have anybody be it. We're going to do instead the best transaction the Suns had last summer, looking at it in hindsight next summer. So basically, at the end of this year, which transaction from the last summer will look the best? Let's go with our guest first, Sam. What do you think? Which transaction will look the best in hindsight?
Well, Max, does choosing to not re-sign Jamal Crawford as the 15th man count?
Hey, I'm in. That sounds good to me.
In all seriousness, if I can't choose that, I don't know. I'm probably going to go with the Ty Jerome Baines trade, and I'm not doing that because, like, obviously that's... Okay, first of all, I'm doing that because, like, I don't want it to be boring and for everyone to pick Rubio or whatever, you know? But I don't think this is going to be the move that makes the most cumulative impact, but I think it has a really good chance to be the move that has the best... most positive return on investment, basically, because it's a good balance. Like, you know what you're getting with Aaron Baines as a backup. I'll be honest, I like Rashawn Holmes as a player more than I like Aaron Baines. Sorry, guys, but I think Aaron Baines is a very worthy replacement. I still think he's an above replacement level player and a good mentor for DeAndre Ayton. More importantly than that, the Milwaukee pick they got rid of is basically worthless, and I think Ty Jerome has a very good chance to outperform his draft pick position by a good amount. I don't think he's necessarily going to be a top 5, top 10 rookie in this class, but I think he will rise up the ranks pretty quickly. I think he's going to play a good amount of minutes, potentially as the primary backup point guard for the Suns this season, and I think if that happens, we're going to look back at this trade very fondly next summer.
David.
I am doubling down, and I've got a feeling we're all going to have the same answer for this one, Max, unless you throw a curveball. But I'm riding the Baines thing all the way, for better or worse. Maybe it's hope more than anything, but I think at the end of the year, if we give it time, I think Baines will be looked at as one of the best acquisitions that we made, not only for his play on the court, and as Sam rightly mentions, Rashawn Holmes can definitely match it with him on the court, if not then some, but for the role that he plays as hopefully Ayton's mentor, and hopefully what we see in growth in Ayton, Baines should get some respect for that as well. So I'm going with that one too, Max.
I guess I am throwing a curveball here.
Ooh.
I mean, yeah, personally, yes, I think that's the right answer. I look at this more as like what is going to be the consensus, and I think it's going to be Rubio.
Yeah.
I think people are going to be like, oh yeah, they did need a point guard this whole time. And so the whole, 3 years, $52 million is going to look less like an overpay. And in fact, it'll probably look like, what the Suns should have done, which is what they should have done, get a good point guard in. I think not only will this be kind of like the Suns fans consensus, I think it'll probably be the general NBA consensus that, the Suns needed a point guard and they're going to win 30-plus games. And it's going to be because they have Ricky Rubio on the team.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
When we get like 2 national TV games all year, like that's going to be the one talking point about the Suns all game long. It's going to be like, get a load of this guy, Ricky Rubio. The Suns needed a point guard, and now, lo and behold, they found him. Like that's just what the national media is going to be talking about. So definitely you're right, Max. Like that's going to be the thing.
You're actually wrong, Sam. They gave us, I think, one TNT game, and it's against Zion. So they're going to talk about Zion. All right. Let's go on to Coach of the Year, because we only have one coach, we're going to turn it into what is the general impression going to be, or not general, it could be your impression or general impression of Monty Williams going to be at the end of the year. David, we'll let you go first this time.
I mean, everyone's kind of raved about Monty already, so I think general impression-wise, everyone's going to be, just swooning over his commanding of the locker room by the end of the year. But my answer in particular, I think he's on a bit of a mission to prove that he's modernized as a coach since his last stint. The preseason has shown, some pretty funky lineups. So I think when it gets to the end of the season, we're going to think about Monty, as a guy who is willing to throw some pretty crazy lineups out there. The roster construction almost requires it at the moment, which we've kind of gone over this whole episode. So that's kind of what my lasting impression of season 1 with Monty might be at the end of the year, is that we might actually have a modern coach on our hands, and thank God, because he's signed up for another 4 years after that, Max.
Yeah, makes sense to me. Sam?
I echo that 100%, David. I think Monty is going to be applauded for trying to modernize, trying to adapt to his personnel, because that's what a good coach does. You take the pieces that you're given, and you don't try to pigeonhole them into a specific system that maybe doesn't work. So I think, I'd like to believe Monty, they're going to play faster and shoot more threes than any of his New Orleans teams. That doesn't mean he's guaranteed to find success. But I do think he's going to at least be applauded for trying.
Yeah, generally agree. There'll be a very strong honeymoon feeling because they're not going to suck for the first time in 5 years.
Hopefully,
I think the general consensus will be year 2 is the big year. He was good. He made the team better, and we'll see in year 2. At least that'll be my consensus. I mean, I hate coaches, so I'll probably complain a lot. But most people will be like, all right, let's go year 2. All right, let's go to 6th man of the year. This is an interesting one, Sam. What do you think? Who's going to be the 6th man of the year for the Suns?
I'm going to go under the assumption that Kelly Oubre starts, so I'm going to say it's Mikal Bridges. Who's the 6th most valuable? I mean, he's not even the 6th most valuable, but if he doesn't start, who's the most valuable player off that bench? It's Mikal Bridges. He's not a traditional 6th man. I think Tyler Johnson's the type of player who could score 15 points off the bench if he wanted to, but Mikal is obviously the most valuable guy. I'm going with Mikal.
Same answer here, David. You got a different one?
I'm going Oubre, and I think it's more hopeful with my Baines answer here, and it's that he leans into that role after being given it and leads the second unit. I think it would be perfect, but again, I'm probably being more hopeful than realistic with that one, Max.
So basically, we all love Mikal. Rookie of the year, I'll start by saying Ty Jerome. Everyone knows I'm going to say that, so I'll spoil it now. David, go ahead.
I went Cam. I think it's a choice in 2, obviously. Tiger Rome, I thought was going to be your answer there, Max, but I think Cam's going to get more chances and probably look better as the season goes on than Ty, although, I hope both of them look great and it's a real race for the Rookie of the Year for the Suns.
Okay.
It's going to be Tiger Rome. It's going to be Tiger Rome.
I
got to agree with you, Max. I love Cam. I hope Cam finds a way to play, but the opportunity is there for Ty, and he's going to take advantage.
They do need him more. That does kind of help him be more the Rookie of the Year for the Suns. But, yeah, I see you too, David. It's going to be interesting. I think both of them will play roles. We'll see.
Yeah.
Most improved player. This is an interesting one, Sam. What do you think?
For improved player, I had to look to see what I had written down before. I'm going Mikal Bridges. And the reason I'm laughing is because I think I may have answered Mikal Bridges for a lot of categories here. But yeah, Mikal is the guy who worked all summer long. I forget. I wish I could credit whichever reporter it was. It may have been Dwayne Rankin, who asked him about specifically what he was doing over the summer, and he said, I went home for 1 week to the Jersey Shore for vacation, but other than that, he was in Phoenix working on his game. And I think he looks a little bit bigger. I think he added some muscle to his frame. His shot doesn't look substantially different. We've already talked about that, and that will limit, I think, the ability for you to like really run more plays for him on offense. Like, he's still not a guy who can necessarily catch and shoot quickly in contested situations, but I think he's going to get his spot up opportunities. I think he's going to continue to be an amazing defender, and I think hopefully that work ethic pays off, and he's the most improved player.
David.
This is a no-brainer for me. Everything that Sam just said is something that I agree with. I'm not really known for my out there takes on this podcast, Max, but I would put my house on Mikal Bridges being the most improved player. I think he is going to take a massive leap this year, and I am all in on him for both this award and probably the next one that we're going to discuss. So let us know your answer instead, Max.
I actually have a different answer.
Ooh.
This is interesting. I don't disagree with you guys that Mikal Bridges is going to be improved. I love Mikal Bridges. I think he's be awesome. And I didn't pick a Suns player, both years. I picked one who wasn't on the Suns last year. I think Ricky Rubio is going to be considered the most improved player on the team. I just think he's going to have more freedom in the Phoenix Suns system to do more things. I think, here's what I'll say. Maybe Mikal Bridges will actually be more improved by percentage of how he was last year to next year.
Yep.
I think the NBA intelligentsia will see Ricky Rubio at a higher level more than they saw anybody else compared to where they were last year, because Rubio just wasn't allowed to be Rubio in Utah, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I think at the beginning of the Minnesota game, at least, Monty Williams showed that Ricky Rubio will be allowed to be Ricky Rubio. Let's go on to Defensive Player of the Year for the Suns. There's not a lot of candidates because it's not a very good defensive team. But I think, David, I'll go ahead and start with you because you kind of alluded to who you're going to pick anyway. Who do you have for Defensive Player of the Year?
I have Mikal Bridges, and I really just have one question for you both. Either of you differing on your answer than that?
Not close.
Not unless I want it to be contrarian, no.
All right, so instead, who's the second best defender on this team?
Oh, God.
Javon Carter, baby. It might be.
Yeah, that would be the right answer, actually. I don't know. It's such a good question. I think Kelly Oubre when he on ball probably, but he gets so many lapses off ball. I don't know, man. That's really hard. There's really not a second best.
And we should probably talk about Oubre, talking up his defensive acumen and wanting to be a, all defense NBA type player. And I think he may have even mentioned being Defensive Player of the Year in a few years. So he'd want to be the best defender on this team if that's his goal. But I think Mikal's going to get all the big assignments. We saw him give fits to Bogdan last night, and I think that's going to be his role. Hopefully in the starting lineup, I think, for this team is they're going to pick the guy, and that's probably something else we should quickly touch on, is they've been quite creative in who they put Rubio and Booker on, I think, depending on what the matchups are, which is great to see. They're not sticking to traditional positions here. So, yeah, it's Mikal, and I think everyone listening should have a think about who the second best defender is, because I think it says a lot about how this team is going to be overall defensively, guys.
Oubre is the best politician on the team.
Yes.
Say that. He's the one who would get elected the best.
For sure.
Very, very easily.
Oh, for sure.
All right. So we're going to go to MVP now. We're going to go 2 deep here. Actually, let's go 3 deep. I didn't prepare you guys for this. Let's go 3 deep for MVP. We'll start with number 1. Is anyone going to go not Devin Booker?
No.
He's obviously the best player. That's easy. Number 2, I did Ricky Rubio. What do you guys think? Is Ricky Rubio the obvious number 2, or is there another answer here?
Wow.
I went with you on that, and before people yell at both of us, Max, I think my theory based on this is if Ayton is the second best player on the team by the end of the year, I think you can go ahead and give the second most valuable player to Ricky Rubio. That's my theory with why I've answered Ricky Rubio on this one. Sam, what do you think?
Well, I probably would be inclined to go with DeAndre Ayton, but I mean, can you guys argue in favor of Rubio? I just don't quite see it. Like, how'd you get there?
The guard play matters so much for this team. They just need stability so much. If you're just using the word value as the answer, it's kind of the Steve Nash mid 2000s case over guys with better stats case.
Right.
They just need him more than DeAndre Ayton. I mean, DeAndre Ayton is probably going to be better in kind of the abstract, But, if you don't have Rubio or Booker on the floor, what really do you have?
Yeah, and I see that. I guess the complicated thing about Ricky that we just don't – it's frustrating. We just don't have an answer for it yet. Is he going to be like he was with the Jazz or with Minnesota? And you were alluding to it before, Max, which is why I'm bringing it up again now, that you think he's going to be used more like he was in Minnesota based on his play in those first 2 preseason games. But I'm not convinced of it yet. So I guess, like, if we fast forward a couple of weeks and we're 5 or 10 games through the regular season, it really looks like Rubio's usage rate is creeping back up and he's going to be staggered with Booker, then yes, absolutely. I could see a really clear argument for him being number 2. Otherwise, me personally, I'll probably default to DeAndre Ayton for now.
I do want to clarify my take on that. I thought that before the preseason games. I just kind of thought that's kind of the reason why the Suns signed him. And I like the way James Jones commented about Ricky Rubio's World Cup performance, which I think is kind of what I saw for Rubio on the Suns. Maybe I think that James Jones felt the same way. So the fact that Ricky Rubio looked that way early in the Minnesota game was nice confirmation bias for me. But I kind of just generally thought that's kind of why they paid him so much. I don't think you give Ricky Rubio that kind of contract if you don't want to use him more than the way that Utah
I don't know.
was using him.
But arguably, they were about to give that contract to Terry Rozier instead.
Don't. We don't talk about that in this podcast. That's banned, Sam. We don't talk about that.
I'm sorry.
But
Never invited back.
I'll go ahead and throw in Ayton for third. I mean, Ayton's got to be third. If Ayton's not third or second, it's a problem, David.
Yep, and I am glad that you've thrown the third in here because it allows me to throw Ayton in too. I think it's very clear. I just wanted to make the point that if we see a big year from Ayton, a lot of it will be to do with the addition of Ricky Rubio, hopefully. So,
true.
But yeah, I think Ayton should be the second best player on this team by the end of the year. And there's an argument that he needs to be the best on the team for it to be a contender in the future in the NBA. But Sam, would you go Rubio for third, or would you throw somebody else in there?
No, come on. I'll go Rubio third. But I will say there's like a slight chance. First of all, if Rubio's not third, that's a problem. That's definitely a problem.
Yes.
Because then we're thrown back into the who is a good point guard on this team. Might as well have Shaq Harrison and Isaiah Canaan at that point. But there's a slight chance that it's Dario. I guess you could just say I have that much faith in Dario that he could potentially. If Dario plays at his second year level with Philly, he was really good.
Yeah.
And so there is a chance there.
Extremely slight. That's like 200 in the periodic table slight in terms of mass. I guess that joke doesn't work. Anyway, I'm gonna say that Ty Jerome could be number 1, and number 1 league-wide award. So, executive of the year. Let's start with Sam. Who do you think? This is league-wide, by the way. League-wide, we're not Suns anymore. This is the whole league.
Yep.
Who do you think is gonna win, or who do you want to win executive of the year? Whatever you want to say.
I think it would be pretty funny and pretty cool if David Griffin won in his first year. I don't think it's gonna happen because so who wins executive of the year, right? We have to ponder. You're a voter, right? You've been given that privilege to vote for executive of the year. Are you voting for the executive who just put together a 60-win team, or are you voting for an executive who put together a surprising team? And they don't necessarily have to have won 60 games, but maybe they were projected to win 30 and they won 45 instead, which is potentially what the Pelicans could be.
Yep.
So I would open that to you guys first. How would you anticipate viewing this?
I didn't think of the Pelicans, and I think it's a really good answer. I think it's a great one to throw up. I think it'll be the popular choice. I am glad you've brought up this kind of background to why people vote for certain awards, because it's something that I've always been a bit nerdy about, and probably alludes to my answer here. I actually think Daryl Morey will be executive of the year because Houston will be a pretty good regular season team, and I think the NBA tends to look out for their own. We kind of saw that with Dwayne Casey winning coach of the year that he got fired in Toronto. And with the China stuff, not that we're getting involved in the China stuff here, Max, I think it'll be a support vote. And everyone will vote for Daryl Morey after the Houston Rockets win 60 games again this season.
Can I change my answer to David's answer? That's amazing.
That's really interesting. That's really interesting.
That would actually be a fun vote. That'd be a cool statement. That for the first time ever, executive of the year would be a relevant thing. But I really like your answer too, Sam. I actually like that better than my answer. I said Sean Marks just because I like the way Brooklyn has, dragged themselves out of the gutter.
Yeah.
Only issue there is Kevin Durant won't play probably this season, or at least not till late in the season, so maybe they don't, look that great. But I think in terms of who has shaped their team better towards where they were, towards where they are now, Sean Marks, I think, has done the best job. I'm surprised no one said the Clippers guys, though. Jerry West
The Clippers would have been my other pick, honestly, before I went with David Griffin, but then I decided to go with slightly more interesting answer, but I think they've got a super great chance.
Yeah, they generally, the NBA teams tend to default to the guys who just got the most good players. Let's go to Coach of the Year. This is kind of an interesting one because we've sort of been a wide open race. David, let's go to you first.
This is where I get to the Clippers. I'm going Doc Rivers. He was second last year and probably did the best job with what he had. So I reckon the narrative again, now that he has the pieces, and they'll probably make a big jump in the win column, I think he's going to have an easy case for Coach of the Year.
Sam.
You know what's crazy to me about Doc Rivers, just as a side note, is that he never won Coach of the Year coaching Boston, but he has won Coach of the Year before 20 years ago on a 500 team with Orlando.
That is awesome. That's a great stat.
That was just because I was looking it up. I was like, who could even potentially win this award? There's no voter fatigue for Doc because he hasn't won in 20 years. So I think that's a great answer, David. And similarly, honestly, I think Steve Kerr even has a shot here as another.
Yep.
He's not my number one choice, but the Warriors, you could argue, for the first time in forever, are going through adversity. So if they actually position themselves to win another chip, then I think I could see him actually being credited there for the way that he manages that team, especially the first 2/3 of the season until Klay comes back. But I would go with, and I think Suns fans are probably going to hate this, but Quinn Snyder, right? I think he is a young and up-and-coming coach who really has a shot depending on how Utah does. Utah got better this year. And I think potentially Suns fans are underrating them. And I don't even say that because of Donovan Mitchell. I don't have a ton of faith in Donovan Mitchell, but I think the pieces around him are good enough at this point. And Quinn Snyder has proved himself as a coach that if Utah wins 55 games, which I think is a sincere possibility, he'll be right there in the conversation.
Yeah, that's a really good one. Utah's going to be good. I went with, and this is based not really on this person himself, although Suns fans know him very well. It's more on the fact that I think the team's going to be extremely good, and he's going to get a lot of credit for helping personalities, work with each other and games mesh. It's Mike D'Antoni for me.
Yep.
I think Houston's going to have by far the best record in the regular season, by a lot. Because they're just going to crush bad teams. Because bad teams can't go against staggered Westbrook and Harden. It's impossible. So they're just going to win a ton of games. Mike D'Antoni will get credit for letting those two guys, do their thing, and then they'll lose in the playoffs as usual. Sixth Man of the Year award. I will start. I hope this guy is a sixth man. I think he is. Montrezl Harrell is an incredible player, and the Clippers are going to be really good, and I think he is going to get a lot of credit for the bench guy. He comes off, energy, awesome. So that's me, Montrezl Harrell. Sam, how about you?
Just give it to Lou Williams again. Lou Williams wins this award every year. If Lou Williams wins again this year, he would be the all-time leader. It would be his fourth win, and he would pass Jamal Crawford. So right there, just give it to Lou Williams. Game over. End of discussion. Best sixth man of all time.
Hey, Max, you know how we always come up with the same answers when we don't talk about things? Montrezl Harrell.
So we all have Clippers.
All Clippers.
Third last year. Lou Will's another year older. I struggle to see a lot of other possible options here. And, I think Montrez will be that kind of perfect scenario where he's essentially a starter without actually being one. So he'll qualify, but he'll play a lot and feast with the Clippers starting lineup.
It makes sense we all took Clippers.
It does make sense because they're a team with so much depth, but I was going to say there's always someone who breaks out.
Yes.
Is Fred VanVleet still coming off the bench, right? Or is he going to be starting this year?
Lowry got extended, so I think he's still going to be on the bench.
That's a possibility. But there's always people who will just break out of nowhere, and it's just impossible to anticipate with this award. Yeah,
it's a hard award to anticipate other than a scoring guard, which is you picked, and we picked somebody who never wins it. So David, you probably lost. All right, most improved player. I think this was the easiest award to pick on the entire board. Usually it's the hardest. I think it was the easiest this year. I'm going to let David start and see if he can predict my answer.
I don't think I'm going to predict your answer, but I'm going to double down because I was robbed during injury last season, and I am going Karis LeVert again, Max.
Oh.
Yes, you had him last year. He would have probably won it if he didn't get hurt, and you were robbed.
Yep. Sam?
Mine's a bit of a weird answer, but it's just speaking with my heart. I am going someone on the Orlando Magic. I know that's not a particularly fair answer, but I feel a lot of camaraderie with Orlando these days, as I think there are some similarities between these two franchises, and I think they've got a lot of players on that roster who could have some success this season. How great of a story would it be if Markelle Fultz actually takes that starting point guard spot and looks serviceable? Like, for a guy with the lofty expectations of a number one overall pick, I think that's a sincere possibility that he would get votes for that. I think Jonathan Isaac could have a big breakout year, and like typically this award goes to someone in like somewhere between their third and fifth season.
Yep.
So I think he definitely has a chance, because I think he showed some real good flashes on both ends of the ball towards the end of last season. I think he could still break out. The other big guy is just Aaron Gordon. Like, Aaron Gordon just turned 24 years old this month.
Wow.
So, and I think that might be one where kind of that's thrown out as Aaron Gordon's going to be the most improved player every year, but this might eventually finally be the year. Who knows?
There's so many Suns fans that are nodding along saying most improved Aaron Gordon on the Phoenix Suns after they trade for him.
I wonder why they feel that way. I can't even imagine. It's impossible to figure out.
I was already rooting for Markelle Fultz, Max, but after Sam's answer here, I'm going to be rooting even harder for Markelle Fultz, because if he won most improved, that would just be the best story in the NBA.
Well, my answer is someone who's less sympathetic, especially his father. He went number 2 after Markelle Fultz.
Ooh.
I think Lonzo Ball is going to run away with this award. His three-point shot actually looks legitimate. He's going to be playing on a super fun team. He has Zion freaking Williamson on his team now in transition. I think Lonzo is going to be near all-star consideration and the obvious runaway most improved player.
Love that answer. That is a great one.
That's a great answer. Yeah.
Going to Rookie of the Year. So I kind of just touched on Zion Williamson, David. Should we not talk about Zion Williamson? Oh, wait, before we get into this, I don't know if you saw the box score tonight. I just looked it up. Zion tonight in preseason against Utah, had 26 points, 5 rebounds, and assists on 9 of 12 shooting.
Wow. Just give him the Rookie of the Year now.
Did he shoot any from outside? Because otherwise I'm going with RJ Barrett.
He had 1 of 1 3-pointers.
I saw him hit that 3. He took it and it went in. I can confirm that happened. But I think you've hit the nail on the head here. He is, as long as he plays, I think he's going to be the Rookie of the Year. I think even if he's somehow not deserving of it, I think just media hype and narrative-wise, he's going to win it anyway. So I think maybe we should just throw out who comes second to Zion Williamson for Rookie of the Year. Sam, you got any opinion on that?
Well, for shits and giggles, like, I looked up the Rookie of the Year odds in Vegas currently.
Yep.
Who do you... Okay, so I guess I'll give my answer first. Like, Ja Morant, right, is the natural choice.
Yep.
I don't think anyone else here is an obvious choice.
Sure.
And so I'll leave it at that. I'll get back to the other thing in a minute. Max?
I agree, obviously. I think Jarrett Culver looked pretty good in his first game. I think his team is going to be kind of good, but not have a lot of other options. So, Dave, this is for you. Jarrett Culver, maybe a dark horse?
He'd probably be my next answer behind Ja Morant, because, they're playing him a lot as almost like a pseudo point guard, which I think suits him down to the ground, and why I wanted him in Phoenix colors, Max. And I'm going to stop there before I start crying. So, Sam, give us the odds, please.
Who did you... The actual odds are so minuscule it doesn't even matter, but who do you think is 4th and 5th for best odds of this rookie class?
So is it RJ and Ja?
It's after Ja and RJ. Okay. And it's minuscule.
Kobe White?
4th is Darius Garland.
Wow, no way.
And 5th is Michael Porter Jr.
Ooh.
So I think Vegas has no fucking clue what's going on with this rookie class. I think it's just assumed that this is Zion's award to lose. And,
real quick before we move on, I want to ask you guys. I'll start with Sam. How good? What level of player is Zion going to be this year? Like, if you had to rank him in the NBA, what do you think he's going to be? Is he the 10th best player? Is he the 20th best player? How good do you think he is this season?
I think he's probably right at reserve all-star status, which is like 24th, 25th best player in the NBA.
Okay. David?
I'm really bad at these things, to be perfectly honest, but I would I'd agree with Sam. I'd say top 30, I think, is going to be probably pretty easy for Zion.
I think he's making the All-Star game. He's ridiculous, man.
Well,
people don't just dominate. Even his preseason, he's still dominating these games.
I mean, he could make the All-Star game just because of the fan vote, too, right? Where we're going to see an unprecedented level of support for this guy. Whether he breaks his knee or tears his ACL in Game 5, he's getting voted into that game. Somehow, it would be my prediction.
All right, let me clarify. I think he'll deserve to be an All-Star. I think he's top 20 right away. He blows my mind.
Yeah, I think he'll deserve it too.
Okay, let's move on to Defensive Player of the Year. We're each going to give 3 of these. I'll go first. I haven't gone first very often.
Do it.
I think Draymond's third. I think he'll get credit for being the only defensive player in his team. I don't think he'll be like as good as he's been in the past, but he'll be good. I'll put Giannis number 2. I think Giannis is a great defender, obviously, not hard to explain. And then really the one that I think is key, I think Anthony Davis is the narrative all behind him. I think Anthony Davis is going to have his best defensive season, and you know what? He's in the Lakers machine now. They're going to want to give him something. I have Anthony Davis winning Defensive Player of the Year. Sam?
So I fucked this one up. I didn't realize that I was supposed to pick 3.
You don't have to. You don't have to.
Okay, can I just give my number 1 choice?
Yep.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I think your choices are all good, Max. Like Giannis definitely makes sense. Yeah, I want to validate your opinions first. Because they're good opinions. And Anthony Davis has a shot too. But I think probably it's still Rudy Gobert for me. Like, just if I was talking about the Jazz getting better before, I think they're a better offensive team and will be just as good defensively. And replacing Rubio, look, I love Ricky Rubio. But replacing him with Mike Conley and then also adding Bojan Bogdanovic to replace Jay Crowder, the Jazz are going to be better offensively, and it puts Rudy Gobert in a really unique situation where he's like one of the few guys in the NBA, I feel like, who really just gets to be elite at defense, and no one gives a shit what else you do besides that. I mean, dunk the ball, sure, have a high true shooting percentage, but, set screens and whatever. But, like, defensively, he is going to be a menace again. And I don't think the voter fatigue is there yet for him, that, like, if the Jazz are good again, I think he'll win it again.
Yeah, no, it's a good pick.
I have him second purely because of voter fatigue, so that's going to be really interesting to see, Sam. I think you make a good point. If they're even better this year and he's even more defined in that role, then he probably will be deserving. I'm going to throw Joel Embiid in the conversation. I think he's going to have a monster year defensively. And from the moment that I wrote this down, I've doubted it more and more ever since, and I definitely am doubting it as it's coming out of my mouth. But I think the Clippers are going to be the best defensive team in the league. And therefore, you could throw a blanket over him, but I think the best defensive player on that team is Kawhi. Now, whether votes get stolen off him from PG and Beverly,
right,
or people just don't vote for him because people just see them as a great defensive unit. But generally, the top defenses are throwing up guys high in the voting for this award. So, I'm not very confident on it, but I'm going to go with Kawhi Leonard.
I love it. He's like finally where he wants to be, and they trying really, really hard. I love it. That's a great one, David. Good one. All right, let's go to MVP. Sam, did you prepare 3 answers for this one?
Yes, I have 3 for this one.
All right,
Sorry, guys.
Let's hear them.
Okay, number 3, I'm going to go with Kawhi. Look, I think there's a real argument that Kawhi is the best player in the NBA at this point. At least he's top 2 or 3 for sure. And so, again, it's just about not getting votes stolen from you and how much he can separate himself from PG.
Yeah.
But I think he's right up there. So he's number 3. Number 2, I'm going with Steph Curry, actually. And I think this is the resurgent year for Steph Curry. Like, if the Warriors win 50-plus games, like, they probably need at least 52, 53 wins for Curry to really get strong nods for MVP. But just, again, the narrative of KD leaving you and Clay missing 50-plus games. And honestly, people have been kind of down to an extent on Draymond for a while. So I think Curry has a really good shot, or at least an outside shot. And then number 1, it's just hard to deny Giannis because he's going to, once again, have a really strong chance to be the best player on the best team. And I think Philly's going to be really good, but I think they're Milwaukee's only competition in the Eastern Conference. So as long as Milwaukee can kind of coast to that number 1 or number 2 seed, it's always, a player on one of those 4 or 5 best teams that wins MVP, and Giannis will be one of those guys.
Max, why don't you go next?
Oh, I'll go next. Mine actually is fairly similar. So I had Anthony Davis number 3, based on the Defensive Player of the Year thing. Lakers will be fine. He'll get there.
Mm-hmm.
So I have Giannis number 2. I agree with everything that Sam said. I think Giannis is going to be incredible, probably even better than last year. It's hard to win back-to-back. You really have to earn back-to-back with the narrative factor into it.
Yeah.
So I have Sam's number 2 as my number 1. I think Steph Curry will reestablish himself as, if not the best player in the NBA, up there. The Warriors will completely depend on him for the first time in a while. I think Steph Curry leads the league in scoring fairly easily. I think we get like a 34 points a game sort of effort from Steph Curry, something like that. I think we're all going to be kind of like falling in love again with Steph Curry, you know, because like once Kevin Durant went there again, it wasn't fun. But remember when Steph Curry was fun? He was the most fun player in the league.
Yeah,
I think he's going to be the most fun player in the league again. I think the narrative of that, like everyone's excited to root for Steph Curry again. I think it's going to be that kind of carries him to one more MVP. David?
Curry's the fun answer here that everyone should be rooting for general NBA fans, but I'm going back to Harden for a bit of a sympathy vote here. I'll throw Joel Embiid in again. Again, predicting that he's going to have a monster year sandwiched in between Giannis, who takes a little bit of a backseat as maybe Milwaukee take a bit of a small step back, or a bit of voter pushback potentially after winning it last year. So that is my top 3, Max.
Yeah, it all makes sense to me.
Okay, question, guys.
Yep.
How many threes does Ben Simmons need to hit to win MVP?
I mean, probably only one, judging by the way Twitter reacted to it, the preseason one.
Is that most improved validation? If he hits like 3 threes, does that qualify him for the most improved award?
If he makes no other improvement to his game but makes 1 3 per game, then quite frankly, like that's probably enough. Right?
True.
Like if he shoots like 33% from 3 on 1 attempt per game, that's give him most improved at that point, honestly, because like you were already so good, and that was the one thing that people just relentlessly shit on you for, and you fixed it. Props to you, man. Just give the
Ben
award.
Simmons like a Make-A-Wish kid or like Markelle Fultz. Like he's really damn good at basketball already. Like you don't have to freak out if he makes a shot from slightly more feet than he shoots from before. It's fine. All right. Well, let's go ahead and move on to 7 seconds or less. This segment where one of us, or in this case, all 3 of us, ask the other one question for which the others have 7 seconds or less to answer and have not prepared. I'll go ahead and go first this time. We'll start with David. What's the biggest thing you've changed your mind about after seeing the first 2 preseason games for the Suns?
Well, the biggest thing I've changed my mind about on this podcast is actually changing my 7 seconds or less question, which we'll get to in a minute, Max.
Okay.
But the biggest thing that I've changed my mind on after the first 2... Mikal starting. I was pretty strong all off-season about Kelly having to start because of this contract, and despite what my personal opinion was, I just think that it was going to be the done thing. But I think as long as Mikal, increases his health and plays more and more minutes over the next 2 preseason games and the rest of practice before the season starts, I think he is going to just make the choice too easy for them to make. So that's my answer.
Sam?
I think it's the Rubio-Booker stagger conversation that we kind of talked about at the very beginning of this episode. Is I was not convinced that it needed to be a thing, and now I am. So, I still want them to play together in spurts, obviously, but I think it would be a really good experiment for Monty.
Mine's Cam Johnson's playing time. I think he's going to play more. He showed me that he can actually hold up on defense a little bit, so I think it'd be easier to get him out there earlier rather than later. Who wants to go next, David?
Yeah, I'll go next because I hate the question that I've written down. So after our discussion throughout this podcast, I'm not known for changing things up too much, Max, as you know. But I'm going to change it up here, throw a very spicy one at the 2 of you and probably get you in trouble. Who is the first person out of Booker, Ayton, and Mikal Bridges to not be on the Phoenix Suns?
Oh my God! Sam, you want to go first?
Oof. It's funny. Matt Moore came on our podcast like a few weeks ago, and that was the most shock. I don't know if you heard it, but like that was the most shocking thing he said to us. Is he was like, I look at those 3 guys, and I don't see one of them's not going to be there in a few years. And it was kind of the first time it hit me. I was like, wait, what? Like one of these guys that I love so much might not be, but it's really strong reality. Mikal Bridges.
Yep.
And because I think the Suns have too much invested in DeAndre Ayton, and they could make a panic trade for an all-star. at which point you would need to trade Mikal Bridges at some point.
Yeah, the panic trade for an all-star point's a good one, and it's almost more of an optimistic outlook than I'm going to have here, I guess. I think if you have a Vegas odds in this, the most likely thing is probably Booker asking out early and wanting a trade.
Ooh.
I just think that's probably the most likely outcome. I kind of think if this works, those three stay. So I'm looking at a scenario where it doesn't work, and in the scenario where it doesn't work, I mean, Booker's the one who's further along in his career. I'm not even sure Ayton has the gusto to ask for a trade, so I'm going to say, unfortunately, it's probably Booker.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different permutations with this question, which is why I love it. I think, Sam, your answer as trading for an all-star is the perfect one and probably the most likely to happen. But yeah, I'm not going to lie, Max, I thought about the Booker asking out scenario, and also, even though it's probably the slightest chance of happening, the Phoenix Suns, realizing that Ayton's not quite the player that they thought he was and trying to get value back for him before he tanks it. And please, nobody at me on Twitter for saying that.
Could you imagine what would happen on Twitter if Ayton got traded? Oh, God. Let's not even get into that. All right, Sam.
All right, I've got different questions for each of you guys, so I'm going to start with David.
Okay.
I did not take this seriously at all. I'll let you know ahead of time.
That's what this segment's about.
I'm glad. I took it less seriously than David did. Jesus.
First of all, to what extent did have you guys talked about that fantasy league, that Suns Twitter fantasy basketball league on your podcast? I assume zero. Okay. Well, David, how many games will your all-white roster win in fantasy basketball this season? And can you give us the explanation for coming up with the name of your team? Because I just want you to tell your listeners about that.
Dave King, if you're listening, turn off the podcast.
So everybody decided to have a little bit of fun with the fantasy league. I take fantasy very seriously. I enjoy it very much, and I am going to be trying to win with my somewhat flawed roster. However, I like to make fun of people who deserve to be made fun of, and I have gone with the Ashley Neville All-Stars and set myself the challenge for draft day of trying to get value at every pick with only white basketball players. And I think I did a pretty fucking good job, if I do say so myself.
So does Hitler. Go ahead.
Max, for you, it's a little bit more blunt. I just want to know, who lets you make podcasts? I mean, really, who lets this guy do a podcast is just what I want you to tell me.
It's a great question. I don't know. I guess it's just the fact that I have enough money to buy a microphone. I guess that's what it comes down to.
It's super easy.
Listen, my fantasy team is not a reflection of how I value fantasy basketball players. It's a reflection of how I value fantasy basketball in general, which is very lowly. I think it's a stupid exercise, and I treated it as such. Is my answer.
I love Gene's answer. Shout out to Gene, who listens to the pod. The people who listen to us let us make the podcast.
That's true.
And the people that listen to the timeline, of which many are very much the same people, I think we all support. And all appreciate their support. So for every loud person who criticizes us for some of our opinions or things we do on these pods or on Twitter, there's a lot of people that are very, very supportive of us.
Yes, you can't hurt us because we have a nice shield of love. The shield of love for our podcast. And we'll end it there. Sam, thank you so much for coming on. Please plug whatever you'd like.
We share so many of the same listeners anyway. Hey guys, I'm the co-host of the Timeline podcast. Listen to us if you'd like some more Suns coverage. I guess the other thing is you can also find me writing for Bright Side of the Sun now.
Yes.
Look there for analysis pieces. Those will be coming throughout the season. But that's basically it for me, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. It was super fun to do the segments and also just talk preseason and some projections.
Yeah, it was fun. And thank you so much for coming on. As far as we go, I am MaxMCC11 on Twitter. David is at the 4 Point Play on Twitter. Please rate, review, and subscribe. As always, it really helps. David, anything else?
Shout out to Max and David. We'll have a funny story on that for next episode, Max, as far as reviews go. But we've got Portland and Denver to finish the season here. And thanks very much to Sam. I've had a shitload of fun on this one, and hopefully the listeners have fun listening to it as well. Thanks, guys.
It was a fun one. Thanks, everybody.